Good. Okay, well, thank you everyone for making the time and joining us today to participate in our 7th discovery session, focusing on the Glenbow. Just a heads up, and the notification session is being recorded. I'll be sharing these on the index resources page. Quick session agenda. I'll remind acknowledgement so that the other EcoTrust discuss the Retrofit Accelerator Program. I'll introduce our Safe Green Building Technology Access Center, introduce the presenters and let them speak, and their specific presentations. We'll go into a panel, our question and answer and discussion, and then we'll join the tour after. Is everyone on the show of hands? Is everyone planning to participate in the tour? That was a question that came up. Yes. We can keep it informal. We are recording, but let's just keep it informal here. So, let's start with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional lands and territories of the Indigenous peoples who have lived on these lands and have taken care of them since time immemorial. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. What became known as the province of Alberta in 1905 is also the traditional and ancestral home to many diverse Indigenous peoples. This includes Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8 nations. The Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising of Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, the Cree, Dene, Nakota, Saulteaux, and the Otipemisiwak Métis government. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. So with that, we pass it off to Amy Spark. That'll read.
Hi everyone, I had the pleasure of meeting most of you downstairs as you're coming in. Just to keep this very brief, I'm a program specialist with our Retrofit Accelerator program, which is why we're co-hosting this session with Sync today. And I just want to say a genuine thank you so much to the Glenbow team for opening up your doors, especially while construction is still active, and I know this is a very busy season for you. So if you're not familiar, the Alberta EcoTrust Foundation, it's in the name, we're a charitable foundation. We've been around since 1991, and we advance environmental and climate solutions across the province. So a lot of our work is quite well known in Edmonton and Calgary, but we fund work across the province. We have lots of information on our website if you want to know about our programs. The two that I'll touch on today is our two built environment-focused programs. So Dean mentioned NBIX, which is the Emissions Neutral Building Information Exchange. This is an industry-led collaborative that shares resources, events, and as Dean mentioned, the recording from today's session will be published on the NBIX website, hopefully quite shortly. So we wanted to make sure that this information was available to a broad audience, even though a small number of us can be here for the tour today. The second program is our Retrofit Accelerator. So this launched formally in September of 2024. And over the last almost 2 years, we have worked with hundreds of building owners across the province to really provide free coaching as well as energy funding for energy studies. So we have two of our fantastic coaches here in the room, Leanne and Drew. So if you have questions about, if you have questions about the Retrofit Accelerator specifically, please feel free to talk to them. And this work could not happen without our funders in Natural Resources Canada and the RBC Foundation Tech for Nature program. So we're really grateful for their support, which is how we're able to offer these services for free to building owners. I'll leave it there. Under the Retrofit Accelerator, one of our partners is SATE. We also work with the Dependent Institute and the Alberta Energy Efficiency Alliance. So Dean's just briefly give an overview of how they work with us. Thank you.
This gets to be our little plug for our Green Building Technology Access Center. So our GBTech mission is to prove, implement, and commercialize new building materials, systems, and methods that leads to construction or retrofit buildings, higher efficiency, lower emission, healthier, and more environmentally friendly. We like to collaboratively create and de-risk high-performance building solutions to address environmental, social, and legal realities. And we also like to develop and provide training and support systems to upskill the residential and commercial construction industries. So if you haven't been to our site on Kinsey campus, you're always invited. We do tours often. This is a picture on the left of our facility up in the northwest corner of our campus. We focus on energy management and renewable energy integration. We have a wall library there that showcases advanced building and material science. This gets viewed quite often by students that come through either through the architectural technologies program, civil engineering program. Those are just a couple examples. We also focus on environmental and architectural ecology. That picture there is a little water lab we have in our building itself. In the gray structure there, we have a 35,000 liter cast in place concrete rainwater cistern. So we use the water inside the building to flush toilets and the overflow space. A couple other areas that we've expanded into testing services. On the left is the environmental weathering chamber. This would simulate both indoor and outdoor conditions with a wall sample that's about 9 foot by 9 foot sandwiched in between. And the HVAC on that side, that's the exterior conditions, so warm to cold. Our first test was with sprung structures, which this is the structure itself that's housing our that. And we had tested a new membrane system for them. And we got down to about -29 on that side. So we embedded the wall sample itself with a through wall sensor stack. We're just finishing up recommissioning of this E72 structural testing apparatus, and that's for compression, primarily compression testing. So with that, this is just showcasing our involvement in the Retrofit Accelerator project under the Eco Trust. One of them is being released this Retrofit Discovery Sessions. This is our 7th of 8. We have set it up as 3 in person in Calgary, 3 in person in Edmonton, and 2 online sessions. So we're getting down to the end here. We'll be finishing off the last one in Edmonton in September. You can see kind of an example of past topics and the MX resources page. Look on the videos if you want to see any of the existing presentations. Another part of our project is this market and gap analysis. So we've kind of focused on these main topics, but all related to the commercial retrofit. So with that, we're going to get into introducing our presenter, and then we're going to get full presentation. So first off, we have Melanie Kjorlien. I asked in advance. Melanie is the president and CEO of Glenbow and has played a key leadership role in the Glenbow Reimagined Capital project to revitalize the museum's downtown home, the J.R. Shaw Center for Arts and Culture. As former COO and VP engagement, she provided operational oversight for the multi-year renovation while also leading the development of Glenbow's new public program, including a curatorial vision and direction for more than 50 galleries, exhibitions, and programming spaces. A member of Glenbow's leadership team for the past 18 years, Melanie has led major initiatives spanning exhibitions, collections, care, and access, programming, and external relations and marketing. As Glenbow prepares to reopen, Melanie is helping lead the museum's next chapter by bringing together architecture, exhibitions, programming, and visitor experience to create a free and welcoming cultural hub for Calgary and beyond. Next, we have Kyle. Kyle combines commitment to design and project management, has facilitated a balanced focus and positive approach to the architecture profession. He looks to enhance social connections, to critically engage and challenge the norms of what inclusive and accessible architecture is within our evolving political climate. Additionally, Kyle is dedicated to showcasing the importance of a social urban environment while developing communities through design and architecture. This is most clear through his continual contributions about Glenbow and the Calgary Event Center. As an architect, Kyle takes pride in his leadership methodology that is embodied within his positive work ethic that encourages strong communication, collaboration through all phases of design and construction. Specifically for this project, Kyle's various roles included project architect, contract administrator, project manager, and designer. Nyell T. Nyell is a highly skilled structural engineer with more than 12 years of experience leading some of the region's most technically demanding projects. Based in Calgary, he specializes in arts and culture, building design, renovations, rehabilitations, and change of use projects, where his technical expertise supports long-term capital planning and informs redevelopment business cases. Nyell is currently leading the structural design and coordination of the Glenbow renovation at the J.R. Shaw Center for Arts and Culture, gaining valuable insight as this iconic brutal structure is transformed into open and welcoming public amenities. Next, we have Regan. Regan has dedicated his career to developing low-energy solutions for complex building typologies. His pragmatic and practical approach to engineering building systems prioritizes the integration and passive common sense strategies within the architectural design. This reduces the dependence on mechanical and electrical performance to low energy technologies. Regan specializes in complex institutional projects with experience spanning post-secondary institutions, laboratories, government facilities, multi-use public buildings, and performing arts and cultural sectors. So mechanical engineering designs have received international recognition for their innovation, energy efficiency, and material design experts. Regan's role in this specific project was managing principal in charge of mechanical, electrical, information technology, audiovisual design. Next we have Marta. Marta is a senior building envelope specialist with more than 12 years of experience in the construction industry. As part of the Intuitive team, she is involved in a variety of new construction of the building envelope restoration project, including major envelope retrofits. Marta has been part of the Glenbow revitalization project team since the beginning of construction in 2022. Her attention to detail and strong analytical skills have played a key role in resolving complex three-dimensional building envelope transition details in keeping with the architectural vision of the city center. And with that, I'm going to hand it off. Left. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Welcome to Glenbow at the J.R. Shaw Center for Arts and Culture. It's a real pleasure to have you here today. I'm going to focus on talking a little bit more about the museum and our goals and objectives for the renovation. And I'm going to leave it to my esteemed colleagues who know much more about your areas of expertise to get into the specifics about how we've created and renovated a building that's much more sustainable and thoughtful in terms of how the building operates and how we're making sure that we're kind of being a good steward and a good contributor to a better environmental future for everyone. So let me talk a little bit about the Glenbow. So as was mentioned, I've been here for 18 years. I honestly can't quite believe it. But when I think that actually I've spent almost 7 years working on this renovation project, it doesn't sound that bad, hey? It's like, okay, I get it. That's how you get to 18 and in pretty quick order. Let's start kind of at the beginning of the renovation journey. So Glenbow, for many years, had on its radar, we need to renovate this building. It's really difficult to get capital funding to renovate cultural spaces. And what you're seeing right now happening in our market is pretty extraordinary. I think we should all really rejoice in the fact that governments of all levels and community members from all parts of Canada are investing in these big cultural infrastructure projects that you see happening here at Glenbow, at the Workland Centre, what will be happening at Contemporary Calgary, the Event Center. I mean, it's a real special moment in time, and I think we should all just really kind of remember these moments, and when all these cultural projects come online, what a difference it's going to make for our community. So before we started the reno, and we started renovation, we closed in August of 21 to begin the renovation. Before that, there were several years leading up to that to really get us to a place where we could even ask for funding in an order of magnitude that would make sense for the renovation. So the Glenbow's board for a few years had talked about what are the best options for the museum for the future. Is it to leave this building? Perhaps this building gets sold, perhaps it gets demolished, and we move somewhere else? Or is it better to stay where we are and renovate? And I'm really happy given, I've always thought that we needed to stay downtown in kind of the hub of what's happening and be part of making sure that we have a vibrant downtown in the city. So I'm really happy that all roads led to us staying exactly where we are and looking at this building and adapting it for the future and for the needs of a museum in the 21st century. So this building was constructed in the 1970s. We opened in 1976. And you may recall, if you had been outside the building before, in the building, it was very fortress-like. So there weren't a lot of windows into the building. If you walked by it outside, you could probably think it was a warehouse, because you couldn't tell anything of what was happening inside because there were no windows. And in fact, and I hope one of my colleagues here will talk about this, you know, it kind of was built like a fortress in medieval times almost, like the marauding armies aren't going to get in because there's so much cement in this building. It's quite remarkable. But there were good things about the building that were really helpful for our functionality. So, and this is going to sound like a small thing, but it's really important. You have a really great freight elevator that's really big. I travel to a lot of other museums and visit with a lot of other colleagues. Some of the things that we had as part of our original construction, museums that had been built even 10 years ago didn't have. So there were things in this building that really worked for us on a very practical level that we wanted to maintain. The freight elevator being one example. The really incredible systems that we had, the mechanical systems that we had, that had done such a good job maintaining RH, maintaining temperature in the building. Sure, we had to make tweaks all the time, and that's just goes without saying. But, you know, workhorses of the building. But there were other things that really weren't working for us. I talked a little bit about the, you know, kind of the exterior, the facade of the building, not very attractive. How can we make the museum more accessible to the community? So that you have those connections from the outside in and the inside out, so that the museum feels like it's a part of this place and not something that's completely closed off from everything else. We also had some pretty serious issues in terms of, I talked about the mechanical systems. Yes, they worked, but they were at the end of their lifespan. The exterior facade, dirty and unattractive, but also starting to flake off and fall off the building. So there it was, this building was kind of heaving a sigh of relief and saying, I've done my duty for 50 years, you need to renovate. Let's get something going here. So thankfully, in 2020, we had funding announced by the province of Alberta, matched by the federal government, and then also contributions from the city of Calgary, as well as local individuals and people across the country who've invested in the capital project. At the same time, we began working with Dialog, with Kyle and the team at Dialog. And we went through the whole functional program conversation, which lasted, this was the early days of COVID, so I just clearly remember it in my mind of sitting in my kitchen and having these really wonderful conversations about what could be. And what a privilege to be in that place, especially if you've worked here for a long time, and especially if you're a person working in culture. I mean, these are opportunities that do not happen. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, especially, I'm really passionate about this place. Yeah, it's been extraordinary and yes, quite difficult project at times, but what an honor to be able to work on it with the partners that we've had at Smith Andersen, at RJC, at Dialog, and all the others, Elliston, to really bring this vision to life. So adaptive reuse was, as I've said, foundational to what we've done here in terms of reimagining this museum. So we've reimagined the building to be more responsive to what we want to do in terms of our public-facing program, which includes the exhibition experience, but also all of those other visitor amenities. Through the efforts of Dialog, we've reimagined what once was a forlorn rooftop into what will be a really extraordinary outdoor terrace. So really thinking about how we can make this building work better for us as an organization and our mission as a museum and a cultural institution, but how it can also work better for the community. 10 slides, whoops. So just talking a little bit about some of the things that were at the fore of our minds when we were working on the functional program. Made a lot of changes to the building that you'll see in terms of changes to floor plates. So we've got some double height gallery spaces that are really critical for our operations. Some extraordinary feats of engineering there. In that back corner where my colleagues are sitting, we took out an exit stair, Dialog's vision, one of their early big moves that they envisioned for the museum's future, take out that exit stair and create a front door, which we didn't have before at street level. These sound like simple things, but really important. And when you're a nonprofit, you better have everything working in your favor, because life's hard enough on all the other fronts, so let's get a front door. So that was a big win for us. But we also have a collection that we have stored on site here. And we kept it on site throughout the renovation, I think, and I know that that was probably a daily challenge for everybody. Probably Regan will maybe speak to some of that. But we also had to make sure that how we were renovating this building was really being done to make sure that we were maintaining our commitments as stewards of the 250,000 objects that we kept on site here throughout the renovation. And one of the first projects that we did as part of the renovation was to move all of our collections into new compact high-density storage systems, which you'll see a little bit on the tour. We also had to think about, in addition to the other things as part of our work and the renovation, is how is it supporting our operations. Also on the financial side, we get about 30% of our funding comes from the province of Alberta. The rest of it is all earned and donated revenue. So what that speaks to is, again, coming back to making sure that we have a building that's been renovated to actually work for the organization and the community. We focused on creating some spaces, some dedicated earned revenue spaces on the 5th floor and in other places, and added some other elements that will allow us to functionally close off parts of the building for rentals after hours, for example. So some really thoughtful work has gone into this project, not just on the part of the museum, but on the part of all the consultants who worked with us on this project. And I can tell you that we're about a year out from reopening. It will be 7 years of kind of working on a reno by, 6 years then, but it feels like, dogs years, I'm sure it's much more. But anyways, these renovation projects are hard. And they are, I don't know how people like Nyell and Kyle and Regan, they just keep coming back up to the plate. I don't know how many more of these I have left in me. I just keep wanting them. But you know what, a couple months ago, I was chatting with Regan and he was telling me about a presentation he was doing for another group. And he said, no, like, this is the hardest reno project I've ever worked on. And that really struck me, and I shared that with some of my colleagues here at the museum. And you know what, like, they just really took that to heart, because when you're in these projects, they are difficult. They try your patience, they tire you out, you begin to question your judgment. And our team here was just, we're museum people, we're not construction people, and we have our own set of worries and concerns. And, for them to hear that other people also found working on this, found it challenging, found it hard, there's comfort in that teamwork. And there's comfort in that notion that we're all working together to do something better, not just for Glenbow, but for our city. So that's really kind of what I wanted to share with you in terms of where the museum, the journey we've been on, what we've tried to do in terms of the adaptive reuse of this building and making it work for the museum and the community for the long term. So I'll hand it over to my colleagues because they have things to say that I want to hear too about the incredible work that they've done. So thank you. Kyle.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kyle Auch. I'm an associate and architect at Dialog here in Calgary. I've had the great privilege of working on the Glenbow project since the very beginning with Melanie and the rest of the team here, but I always do this at the beginning of my presentations. I represent hundreds of people and tons of efforts that have gone into this building that are not here with me today. And so we always want to take that opportunity to kind of understand that amount of effort that's gone in over these past 6 to 7 years that we've been working on it. So this is what you see as kind of the most recent shot of what the Glenbow Museum is on that northeast corner. And this is what it used to be. So this original building, this was the existing Glenbow in 1975, opening in 1976, designed by the local firm of Albert Dale and Associates. And what we like to call it is a failed attempt at brutalism. Brutalism is supposed to feel light. It's supposed to use an extremely heavy material to almost seem like it's floating off of the ground plane. Whereas the original Glenbow kind of slammed itself into the earth. And similarly to what Melanie had said, this museum was a concrete bunker. And we really do, after this many years of renovating it, feel that the original architect did not want it to ever change. And there are parts of this building that were very, very resistant to change. And that's one of the difficulties in renovating a building from the 1970s that really had a totally different motive of protecting the collections rather than creating a community space that interacted with the city. So that's really kind of where this whole conversation started. As Melanie had said, there were several ideas and ways to kind of reinvigorate this building, reinvigorate this project, and also the community that kind of is surrounded by it. There were several things that Dialog wanted to do with this building, and for those first year and a half prior to us getting funding, we started to look at the potentials within this building, and that's really what we focused in on. Once Melanie and the rest of the Glenbow board kind of allowed us that freedom to really see the potential within this building is when we started to understand what it could actually offer us. And I will give a ton of different insights while we do the tour, especially around the kind of the details of the construction and the architecture and the design. But when we saw this building and really started to dig into the bones of it, we saw it for so much more than what it was. And we like to say that the potential was always there, but the team was there to actually unlock it. And so, like Melanie had said, one of the very first things that we had noticed that Glenbow didn't have a front door. It really didn't have its own identity on the street and within the public realm and fabric of the cultural heart of downtown Calgary. It was the same material as the Calgary Telus Convention Center beside it. It's the same material as the Marriott Hotel that's also beside it. And this entire block was kind of constructed as this monolithic element that we wanted to kind of break down and dissolve. And so you'll see through a lot of the architectural moves, we really did kind of separate Glenbow, giving it its own identity for the very first time. I understand that this is a green building conversation. And a retrofit conversation. Our team specifically, along with Marta and Regan and Nyell and the rest of the consultants, really do love the fact of using our existing building stock and challenging what they can be and their presence and function within an urban environment. So we saw this as an incredible opportunity, and from a sustainability perspective, you can imagine building this size of museum, which is over 360,000 square feet of brand new construction, you're not going to get the same level of quality of materials that you do in this existing building. For example, the waffle slab. The waffle slab created the floor plates of this building, which are extremely robust and wonderful and beautiful in the aesthetic way of creating architecture, but something we would never be able to achieve today because of the level of effort, fees, and costs associated with getting this type of structure. So we also looked at that as one of the opportunities as opposed to something that's prohibitive to the design. In this building alone, so by reusing the existing building, we're preventing 56,000 tons of new carbon from being produced, and also saving 38,000 tons of concrete from reaching the landfill. So that's a significant amount of energy that this building has embodied within it, and something that would potentially kind of exacerbate that situation of wasting that much energy to build something that we already have. So these are kind of the 6 primary goals that with Melanie and the rest of the team we really focused on. So the new Glenbow is radically accessible. The previous Glenbow didn't really have the most kind of it didn't have gender-free neutral bathrooms. It had difficult ways of kind of circulating through the museum from elevator to stair was very disjointed and not democratic, so we kind of alleviated that. The new Glenbow moves back of house to center of house. We wanted all the inner workings of the museum to be expressed as part of the artful experience, not just specifically in the exhibitions and galleries. The new Glenbow is a better way to build. I've just relayed to you about the amount of carbon that was saved and prevented in this building, as well as creating a building from an envelope that had 1 inch of insulation to a building that now has 6 to 8 inches of insulation on the exterior, allowing the mechanical systems to breathe a little bit more and to allow this building to function on a higher performance level. The new Glenbow is courageously entrepreneurial. Like Melanie said, this is a non-for-profit organization, and we wanted this building to generate its own revenue by creating opportunities where Melanie and the rest of the Glenbow team could come in and rent portions of this building, making it completely accessible to all members of the community and the public. The new Glenbow offers new and multiple experiences. I'll say this many times on the tour, but one thing I love so much about this building is if you were to design a similar building with the same type of program and function of the Glenbow, as a new build, you would never get the types of spaces and the creative kind of relationship between spaces as this building offered us during the construction. And you'll see that when we hit certain locations like the Cube Gallery, the Salon Gallery, the Theater, and the Vertical Gallery. Those are all very unique moments and spaces that no new museum would ever even imagine to create. And then the new Glenbow is an urban provocateur. We are in the heart of the cultural center of Calgary. And with its neighbors, like the Work On Center, its relationship to East Village, the public library, the event center, and other various kind of cultural activities, it's all going to create this extremely rich ecosystem of cultural diversity and offerings that this city has been kind of craving for a very long time. This is a quick sketch. I will again say this on the tour a lot. We considered this building a pancake building. Everything was flat. There was no volume, no experience, and no kind of relationship between the various floors in the building. And that was our goal, was to open it up, not only through the exterior, but also in the interior, giving Melanie and the Glenbow team a new offering of different spaces that allow that collections to be expressed in new and exciting ways. So this is the old building that we saw, or sorry, that's the new building. And what we want to do here is just quickly run through kind of the architectural process. So we took this building, we cracked the facade open. We exposed all of the inner workings. We removed everything from the building, from the facade to the inner walls, everything down to its base structure. We removed the Gordian knot, is what my colleague Robert Claiborne calls it, as the northeast stair. This was probably the most expensive and most rewarding move in the entire design and construction process. And the complexities of it are so vast. One, because we share a big expense with the Calgary Telus Convention Center, so we don't have a neighbor beside us, we have a neighbor below us. And you can imagine that with a fully functioning building all year round for events and conferences, removing this level of concrete and stair is not the most pleasant experience. By doing that, we had to stitch the building back up. Nyell wouldn't let us just have it floating there, so we had to obviously add new structure to this building. And then we started to remove volumes, or remove floor plates and create new and interesting volumes throughout the building, such as you can see here. This is one of the very first shots that I was on site when we got to remove the exterior facade. And this was a very, very important moment architecturally for our team, because it was the first time that Glenbow really started to interact with the urban environment. The urban environment was coming in while Glenbow was coming out. And it was this really exciting moment for us to know that we were actually going to achieve something that we've been planning for a very long time. A little bit about the facade before I pass it off to my colleagues here. When we looked at the facade, we wanted something in a building that had more questions and offered more stories than gave more answers. And so we came up with this term of fuzzy, because we didn't really want it to give off the same kind of experience on any facade, and we wanted to drastically change all day, every day, all year round. And that was really dependent on how the sun interacted with the facade and created this kind of shifting moment along the cladding that allowed it to change momentarily. So we got a lot of inspiration from Ai Weiwei's very interesting artwork, where he took singular items and put them together, and through that different vantage point and that kind of layering, you're starting to see something completely different. And you're starting to question, why are you actually seeing, or what you're actually seeing, as opposed to saying, oh, it's just a bug. So we tried to really do that with the facade. These are examples of the 3D prints that we did. We probably did about 150 different test prints of the facade cladding. And we started to get a little bit close to where that fuzziness existed. Something where the blurred lines, you don't know what is shadow versus form, you don't know what is light versus dark. And we started to get a little bit closer. And this is when we started to do one-to-one scale mock-ups of the building cladding for the facade. And you can see how the sun is really interacting and playing on these panels. And you can imagine that just from the two, that we're seeing this much interaction with the environment in daylight, you exaggerate that and extrapolate it over an entire facade of 8 stories. And then we also had to integrate metal panels. Obviously, Regan had his requirements as well for this facade. And so how do you start to integrate a really robust kind of soft material like concrete and malleable material to something that required 50% perforation and also matched those panels very closely? These are just some quick images. Marta's going to get into kind of that development of the building envelope, and you can see how much of a rough shape the existing building envelope was in when we started to remove those precast panels, something that was very difficult over the construction process to mitigate and make sure that our envelope was extremely robust. And this is us moving very strategically around this building as we started to develop and kind of rebuild that facade. And then these are the finished images that you see today. This is our northeast corner of the boardroom here. That's just in the north of where we're sitting. This is all new structure in that location. So there's very interesting volumes in that location that I'm taking a tour. But this was a very important moment for Glenbow to actually reintroduce themselves into the urban environment and also give them an incredible space to have their work kind of relocate. This is the south elevation where the theater is the most prominent piece of the facade. This is the northeast corner. So removing that northeast corner allowed us to open up that northeast entrance, providing its own entrance for the very first time. This was the most specific element where we engaged with the Indigenous community most importantly on. They had a very big part of this entire project, but this was so important as this, when you're at a very specific moment in June, at the beginning of June, if you're here around 5:30 in the morning, the sun is coming up exactly in that location and funnels its way all the way through the building into the Calgary Tales Convention Center. So there's a very strategic location of why this is exactly due east. And then just some very provocative facade shots of the cladding. I'll pass it over to the map.
Hi everyone, my name is Nyell, Tuchscherer, as Dean has pleased. I'm a project engineer at RDC Engineers and been at RDC for 14 years now. So it's been an honor to be part of this project. It's been a challenging project, as everybody's alluded to, and it's been very rewarding as well. So I'll just speak a bit to the structural challenges that we faced and what we performed with hybrids here. So just a quick overview of the building as a whole, a picture of our drawings. The one on the right here is in red is all of the demolition that we underwent, and then the portion on the left is the new structure that we introduced. So as Kyle had indicated, the big portion or the big challenge of the project was removing the northeast stair. As you can see, that it's forms more of the ladder system, stabilizes the building from wind loads, side loads, and so by removing that, we had to reinstate it in some other method. So we introduced some bracing and some other additional walls, but the sequencing of that event over construction and allowing Elliston to continue to do the renovation elsewhere, we had to sequence the floors working from top-down approach and then slowly introducing the lateral system back in. So that was the primary focus, but other areas that we'd tackled were the new theater space, double height space, and then there's the cube gallery and the salon gallery, taking out portions of the waffle slab that were there for providing that 150,000 square foot loading to support all of the Glenbow artifacts. So just, I'm going to focus primarily on the lower levels because that's where the bulk of the renovations took place. As you can see on the south side of the building here, that's the new theater space. So we took out a portion of the waffle slab, and in doing so, we had to reinstate some of the structural capacity by putting in some steel framing below. But we worked with Dialog to optimize that, make sure that we didn't have to introduce as much steel as we initially thought. And so just trying to keep costs down, keep our carbon footprint down, and achieve the end result, which you can see later today. The northeast corner, we also took out a portion of the floor to add the entrance, and we also, it's a double height space there, and creating the wedge gallery, which you'll also see later today. This is just the framing that we introduced, so we've got diagonal sub-framing here, and that just allowed us to reinstate the slab capacity in the adjacent bays because of removing that the bay to the south. On the level 3 portion, there is an existing double bay span, so I believe it's right around 18 to 19 meter span, and that is consists of pre-tensioned slab. So in that case, it's all high stress strands that we had to decommission, essentially slowly cut one strand at a time because they're under high stress, and then cut out that entire span. And so there again, we worked with Kyle and his team to optimize the best location for that, just so that we weren't impacting the structure around it. And it was, I guess, a very rewarding sight when it came down and actually seeing that slab being removed and the amount of space that it gave to the museum. So, and then, yeah, this is the floor here. You can see that it's opened up and then has a raised floor that wraps around just to facilitate the elevator. Next is the level 4 space. On the northeast corner is still the stair being removed. We have the east side there where we introduced the double height space for the salon gallery, but also the bump out or the pillow window to allow light to come in. And so all of those spaces poses a challenge. This one in particular, we had to deal with the wind loading coming on this wall and the columns that were there before. They weren't designed for that 2-story wind load effect, so we had to introduce new framing. On the lower floors, we introduced just some column jacketing, meaning we put 6 inches of concrete around the existing columns just to stiffen them up and make sure they could take that load. And now I'll share some photos that I took along the way just of the renovations because it gives a better picture of what the transformation was. As you can see here, this is the northeast corner with the stair removed and some of the new steel bracing that's gone in just to reinstate that lateral system. The one photo that I found quite interesting, I took when I was on site, they were cutting the wall out and they managed to get their large blade stuck in the wall, so they had to demo the wall down to that portion to get the blade out. So it was pretty entertaining to see that. And then on, Kyle shared a photo of it before, but opening up that east wall, because one of the unique features of this building is that there's an 8-inch concrete wall all the way around the entire building, and it goes from basically level 3 all the way up. And we've poked holes through this building on the wall, but it's very robust and it's a ladder system because of that. So we had the opportunity to introduce some of those openings on the upper levels. Salon gallery, cube gallery, we'll see more of this today, but this is the behind the scenes before all the finishes were replaced. So over here, you've got your PT slab that was removed, and you can see how much space it gave to the facility. And then on the left, you've got the salon gallery, which is just on the east side of the building that forms part of the pillar window. New central stair, I guess I didn't touch much on that, but that was another space where we introduced a full height stair in the middle of the building. And this is the forward looking up of the opening that we put through the waffle slab. And there again, rather than using steel to subframe some of the building, we used FRP strapping, so very environmentally friendly, less carbon footprint, and it just puts straps on the underside of the waffle slab and reuse the waffle slab to its full potential. New theater, here again, the cells portion of this is, quote on the left, is a portion of it being demoed. The challenge with pouring a new bleacher in this space was that the main floor slab is only an 8-inch slab. It's not a waffle slab like this. So we weren't able to form the bleachers directly on top. We had to suspend the formwork from level 3. So it was all hung as we were pouring concrete. And then later we demoed the rest. So a portion of level 3 was used to support the bleachers, and then a portion of level 2 there that remained was also used to hang the bleachers. And with that, I'll pass it off to Stefan.
Thanks everyone for coming. So I'm going to set a timer because I could probably sit here and talk about this project for days. I bet everyone else wants to see the building, so that's why you're all here. So again, my name is Regan Moffat. I'm a principal at Smith Andersen. So we were involved in the mechanical, electrical, AVs, and comms for this project. So Mel mentioned before, this was the most challenging project I've done in my career. I think I've found my limit of challenging projects. I don't think you could get, I hazard to bet you could not get a more challenging retrofit project based on the last 7 years that we've gone through on this project. And the building typology, all of the little side stories and stuff, side complications that went on over the years. So the complexity of this project, I can't really give it justice. There's a lot going on. First of all, it's a museum. So anyone that knows museums, if you try to maintain a Class A double A space in a museum, plus or minus 5% RH or humidity and plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius temperature control, that in itself is a huge challenge, especially when it comes to mechanical design and engineering. So a second piece is an existing building. That existing building is connected to, and I'll go to the next slide, but that existing building right here is connected to an operating convention center that actually sits below the building. So the convention center extends below, in the basement level, below the Glenbow, and needed to maintain operation throughout this renovation, the most part. So the other piece, we've also got a hotel attached. So, and when it comes to a building code standpoint, when we did a building code evaluation, this hotel caused our entire complex to be classified as a high building, which it was never designed to. So we had to take the Glenbow from what was previously not a high building to a high building classification. And so again, anyone that knows architecture and engineering, adding in smoke evac, adding in stair pressurization, all of these life safety systems that now have to be built in to the project because of that. We are served the mechanical plant that serves this essentially, this portion of the block is located again at the convention center. That's an operational plant, steam boiler plant, chiller or cooling system that serves both the convention center and the Glenbow. So we don't have a dedicated mechanical plant within this particular Glenbow building itself. It's all served off the convention center. That all needed to be maintained operational because the convention center was open throughout that. So So like I mentioned, lots going on. A few of the other things, again, the shared loading dock is a shared loading dock at both Convention Center and Glenbow. Shared, it sits underneath the Glenbow as well, on the main floor. We have a bunch of different stakeholders involved in this project. So obviously Melanie on the Glenbow side, Convention Center is the operator of this building on behalf of the Glenbow. The City of Calgary, that both Convention Center and Glenbow are civic partners. So the City of Calgary is also a partner in it. And then finally, to just throw another wrench in the whole thing is that we had an operating Rogers cell tower located on the roof that needed to maintain operation throughout the renovation project. So Mel mentioned that they kept the collection in the building itself while the major renovation happened. So we had to consolidate that collection, or Alison and the team consolidated that collection to a couple of floors while they pulled off the exterior facade on the building, like I mentioned. That collection needed to maintain the plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 5% RH, essentially with no building envelope. So, and mechanical systems that were kind of phased, like sequentially being replaced throughout this whole process, because the mechanical electrical systems were life cycle, like Melanie mentioned. So, again, I think I've found my limit of complexity, but it is a good example from a retrofit standpoint. If we can do something like this to this building, I think anything is possible with these existing buildings that are in life cycle to need replacement. So it's from that standpoint, I think it's a great learning and example of what makes a successful retrofit happen. So I'm going to quickly talk about sustainability. So one of the things that we, obviously we're renovating this building. It's 1970s vintage. Mechanical systems were original, 1970s vintage. Not a lot of redundancy, completely life cycle, and not very efficient. And so one of the challenges early on that we got from the City of Calgary is we have this requirement that you guys meet 40% energy reduction from at least 2027, or 2017, sorry. And like when we first got that requirement, I kind of shook my head like, that is kind of ridiculous. Like, first of all, it's an existing building, it's a museum, that is going to be super challenging. But it was also at the same point, it got us thinking, like ourselves and our Kyle, architect Kjorlien, Marta, like what, it sets a goal and it sets a target, and can we get there? Can we actually get that 40% reduction of energy consumption in this building from NECD 2017? And so what we did is we went through a series of kind of parametric modeling. We built a reference model. We started looking at a bunch of energy conservation measures to kind of look what, is this something that we can achieve? And in the end, through a bunch of different iterations, we were managed to get to that 40%, which I think on a project like this was a pretty big accomplishment in my mind. We don't, again, this took get talked about a lot, and, everyone, let's talk about, the exterior building and all that stuff, but the fact that we managed to achieve that energy reduction is, in my mind, in my experience, a pretty big deal. So, and then the other piece of that is that energy reduction came without touching the mechanical plant. So we did nothing to the convention center side. We didn't touch any of the pumps, the boilers on that side. We just left everything as is. We weren't really able to get any kind of energy reduction from plant upgrades. Everything came from what was in the Glenbow itself. So exterior facade, insulation, controls, some of the ventilation strategies. So one of the main energy consumption measures that we did was energy recovery or heat recovery on the ventilation air throughout the building. And so there was two pieces to that. One, it reduced our energy consumption from the ventilation standpoint. The other thing it did is it gives us a bit of control over the air we bring into the museum. And so air quality is a huge deal when it comes to museums. And one of the big concerns that we had was, we do have fairly good air quality in Calgary most of the year, but in the event of a big wildfire season or something like that, we want to be able to control what we're bringing in. And so by having a heat recovery system that recovers both sensible and latent heat, so humidity and temperature, we were able to also control the quality of air coming into the building. So, and this is all controlled, so the whole system controls the outdoor air brought in based on occupancy, based on indoor air conditions. So it's all built into a control system that automatically adjusts to suit kind of the requirements and the what's happening in space itself. So that was a big energy on top of the envelope. The envelope is probably the biggest one. Mechanical, electrical upgrades, again, all life cycle. We had to go and basically rebuild the electrical system in the building, coming up with a bit of a strategy of consolidating a lot of the electrical rooms in a central core, making it more efficient. Again, with this building operating throughout this whole renovation, we were having to do the phasing and sequencing of building new electrical rooms, getting them all ready up for while keeping existing ones running, and then doing a cutover. These were all sequenced through the construction phasing by Alston and subtrades. So we talk about lighting again. I won't go into detail. You guys will see it here. There's some amazing ways that we got natural light in the building. Kyle mentioned it. It was very much a pancake. Not a lot of light in this natural light in this building at all previously. Again, I came up with some pretty, and a lot of it's the architectural elements. Came up with some pretty interesting ways to daylight this building. And then fire protection, life safety systems. Again, being a museum and important to the collection, there was a lot of systems that we added, giving the Glenbow more redundancy, giving them more reliability. Early detection systems, so that if you see this orange piping running in the ceiling space, that's an early fire detection system that monitors any kind of smoke in the building. It'll set off an early alarm. So lots of system upgrades to help both on the energy side as well as giving them Glenbow a little bit more resiliency and redundancy within the other systems over there. So with that, I'll pass it on to Marta.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marta Karlova. I work for Intuitive as a senior business network specialist. And I just want to get a show of hands from the audience. How many of you know what business envelope is? Almost everyone. There's not going to be talking about it today, but I'll talk about Glenbow business envelope, which is fun. So, as you are aware, since so many of you shook your hands up, building envelope is anything that transitions between the interior of the building to the outside. So anything that separates the interior spaces from exteriors, roofs, walls, windows, delivery components. And building envelope consultant and building science is essentially the science of transitions between the different envelope elements, making sure that we provide the necessary recommendations to keep the performance up and reduce the number of leaks throughout the life cycle of the building. As in addition to the building envelope consultant team from Intuitive, we had another team, building envelope clinician, that did air and leakage testing on the building while it was in construction. So, as you can see from those two images on the screen, the new GR Shaw Center of Arts and Culture is a project of transitions. It's transitions between old and new, interior and exterior. And of course, building envelope being the sense of transitions means that we rose up to the challenge. Of the challenges we had, I would like to focus on 4 today. One, as previously mentioned, is upgrading the 1970s building to modern performance standards, working with the existing concrete and how it impacted the envelope installation, connection to the adjacent buildings. So we had the Calgary Tolson Convention Center on the west and below, and we had the plus 15 pedestrian bridge between the existing Glenbow and the Arts Commons building. And also just in general, design of the building envelope and construction in 3 dimensions. The performance targets were previously mentioned a couple of times, but one of the challenges that we as business envelope consultants had to consider were how do you achieve those performance targets while also meeting the architectural requirements and creating more spaces where you have this connection between inside and outside. So here in the images, you have the photos of the pillar window from outside looking in and from inside looking out. So you have that visual transition between the inside and outside through the envelope. But in order to achieve those transitions, more glass had to be installed on the building. I think there was overall an 18% increase of the glass to opaque wall ratio. So how is it possible to achieve those performance targets while also increasing the amount of glass? The main thing that was done is increase the R value of all the existing components. Existing original design was aiming for 2 to 3 inches of discontinuous insulation. You can see in that existing built-in drawing that I have on the screen, the wall insulation has a gap with the roof insulation. So the construction of the 1970s envelope had these discontinuities and thermal bridges between the different assemblies, which was pretty typical for 1970s, but with the current building, we needed to make sure that all of these envelope control layers transitions were continuous. So the new walls have 6 inches of insulation, new roofs have 8 inches of insulation. All of the double-glazed windows were upgraded to triple-glazed, and this gorgeous skylight that you can see on the screen actually has a quadruple-glazed IGU system. And in addition to that, the new building is more airtight. In terms of achieving airtightness, that's where the second challenge comes in. The preservation of existing concrete, of course, prevented 13,000 tons of concrete from going into the landfill, but at the same time, we had to work with that existing concrete substrate and being able to apply new membrane on top of it. The photo on the left shows the existing Glenbow membrane. It was no longer in serviceable condition once the cladding was pulled off. It had gaps, it had cracks, it just was aged and no longer performing. So new self-adhering membrane was installed on the exterior envelope, but even so, like even if the installation of the membrane was near perfect, as you can see in the middle image, because of the concrete substrate unevenness and sharp edges and a lot of different existing conditions, we had to really focus on visiting the site multiple times at the beginning of the project, as well as working with our commissioning team to do air and leakage testing at the beginning of the project to set those benchmarks for installation. So there was a little upfront effort to set those benchmarks, but once we had figured them out, I think the installation throughout the project continued much more smoothly. And that allowed us to achieve this airtight assembly. The third challenge I mentioned was connecting to the existing buildings. And one of the reasons this was such a huge challenge is that we didn't really know what we were looking at until we removed the existing cladding and existing components. So here on the screen, I have the +15 bridge to Glenbow Museum as an example. The photo on the left shows the existing conditions once the cladding was removed. And of course, we were looking at those big anchors below the +15 that were supporting it, as well as existing steel structure on the side. It's kind of hard to see, but it's like this dark reddish existing structure there, the existing framing. So we had to really look at the existing conditions and understand how the geometry of all these components works with our new transitions. The middle photo shows the insulated wall of the Glenbow Museum before it got clad, and the last image shows the final clad. So of course, with the new cladding like this, you wouldn't even know what was happening behind it, and that's the goal. The fourth challenge that we had to overcome as part of the business level consulting is three-dimensional details. One of the factors that both contributed and helped resolve this challenge is the number of envelope-related substrates that were on this project. Ellisdon was the general contractor for Glenbow, and they did an absolutely phenomenal job coordinating with all of the substrates. Just from the envelope standpoint, we had heavy Ferguson, Flynn, Giba, Custom Mills, Park and Johnston, and I'm sure a few others that I haven't mentioned that were working on the different envelope components, interacting with each other and basically being in each other's spaces during construction, and of course, envelope detailing being detailing that heavily focuses on transitions required us to also understand the different scopes of the substrates, and also to frequently talk to them, meet with them on site, try to collaborate and brainstorm about the different and transition details that we had to deal with. And I would just like to focus on two details specifically. One is the west stairs entrance. The challenge with this was that the existing building volume was pulled in, exposing the waffle slab to the exterior. And once that became exposed, we had to really think about how to insulate that. There were several, or more than several, brainstorm sessions with Dialog, Ellisdon, and the subtrades, both on and off sites, to figure out what our best solutions were. In the end, we did go for spray foam to provide air, VPB area, and insulation continuity, but we had to understand how that's going to work, both with the exterior cladding outside of the soffit and with the transitions to the curtain wall down below. So just in this one small space, we had at least 3 different substrates. We've had Ferguson on the wall and curtain wall. We had Heavy on the GFIC. We had Giba on the spray foam, and we had Flynn on the roof. And we met with the substrates multiple times just to understand the sequencing of everyone's scopes, to brainstorm. And one of the reasons I really love Glenbow as a project is that I found that every time we have those brainstorming sessions, everyone from the installers to the site supers to the GCs, like designers, everyone had contributed based on their past experience, based on their best recommendations. So it really felt like one big collaborative exercise anytime we were on site trying to resolve these details. And the last detail I would like to discuss is, of course, the gorgeous northeast corner, which is exactly right there, as Kyle already mentioned. The challenge with this corner was that both in terms of the east staircase being smaller, that meant that the roof assembly in that corner was installed later than the roof assembly at the main part of the building. So we had to consider the transitions between the northeast corner roof to the adjacent roof, but we also had to consider the transitions between the roof assembly and the curtain wall. This is the only place on this entire building where the curtain wall extends past the roof slab and goes all the way up to the parapet. So we had to really think how that roof vapor barrier transitions onto the wall and the curtain wall, how the curtain wall transitions to the wall adjacent to it. And it's a lot of fun to do that when you're hanging on side in the building 8 stories up. But again, with the through the collaboration with the team, and by doing several meetings before this corner was constructed, understanding the shop drawings, reviewing shop drawings with the installers, and being on site a few times just to understand how the actual as-built conditions work, we were able to, I think, build a really robust detail that is also really aesthetically appealing. So to conclude, although we did have a few challenges from building envelope standpoint, it is through collaboration and everyone's ideas that we were able to resolve this. And I think that, again, final product that was provided is a big part of having not only a very talented design team, but also a phenomenal general contractor and all of their efforts in collaborating with all of the subtrades, and all the subtrades being really on board, really proactive, thinking of solutions, really creative. And I think that's why, again, this is one of my favorite projects. Thank you.
So, I'm going to start by saying thank you all so much for, especially the consultants that dedicated their time both to this project and coming in today and sharing. This was eye-opening and enlightening to me, especially after being involved in this Retrofit Accelerator project for multiple years now. I distinctly remember being at least 2 to 3 years ago, attending a conference, seeing portion of the wall, the building envelope pulled apart, taking pictures of it myself, just getting into a retrofit accelerator project. Geez, what exactly does this all mean? Learning for myself. So first and foremost, thank you all. I really appreciate it. This was great. So with that, we had some questions dialed in, but in light of time to get to our tour, because I think everyone gets excited about that, I'd obviously like to open up the floor to some questions from you guys in attending. So let's do some questions and make sure we have enough time to get to that tour. Go ahead. Who's got a question? Go ahead.
Two questions. It's pretty good. Okay. So, zero and green sustainability achievement, like say, LEED certification, consider. That's first question. And the second is, what I heard is the heating and cooling source is due from the central plant on the other side. So during the design, what's the limitation of bringing its own like independent heating cooling source, like a condensing boiler, heat pump, or chillers? What's kind of the barrier and to do that? Is there policy layer or yeah? Two questions.
So the correct.
Yeah, I could probably take that one on. So as far as lead goes, I don't think lead was ever discussed at the beginning. I think there's enough other complexities. Like I think the energy target's really important piece. So lead wasn't really a factor to my knowledge at the beginning. As far as the energy, like the mechanical plant, so I don't think there is an appetite to really look at building another mechanical plant for the dedicated for the Glenbow. There's an operations agreement that exists between Glenbow and Convention Center, and it's been in existence for some time. And so, to reduce the cost of the project, we decided that that plant has capacity, and actually, as part of that, so I didn't really mention this on the presentation, but we are currently converting that entire boiler plant over to the district energy system as we speak. So piping is going into the convention center mechanical room right now to convert this entire complex over to district energy, which is another, for any of you that know the district energy plant in downtown Calgary, and their ambitions to be net zero. In a few years, that will further enhance the energy savings for this project and get us closer to a net zero museum. So, thank you.
Yes.
There was another one?
I was actually going to comment on that and just say by the time Glenbow is open, it will be connected to the Calgary District Heating Plan and through the City Calgary channel. I'm trying to get us to update the energy model, so we'll be reporting on the updated information on GHG reductions and energy savings.
You work City, correct?
Sorry, yeah. City Calgary, yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity for both Glenbow and Convention Center to connect to the district energy system. There's obviously a lot of complexities with that too. The district energy sector isn't able to produce steam, which Glenbow needs for humidification. So we had to take a lot of the steam systems off of the convention center and put them on their own independent system here. So.
Go ahead.
So I had a question here in terms of, I guess we discussed how we wanted to stay, very close there in terms of relative humidity, right? The temperature concerns. Was there any concerns, or I guess, considerations in terms of like very clean air, like almost like clean room? I don't know if there's any clean room requirements for some of the exhibitions. Question mark?
Like the level of filtration, like is pretty similar to a commercial office building. Like we do have provisions that in the mechanical systems, the outdoor air, the HRVs that we install, we do have provisions to install carbon filtration. So in the event we have a bad fire year, we could put carbon filters in and still scrub a lot of that bad, dirty air coming from the outside. I think in the lab, we maybe have a bit more stringent or higher level of filtration where they're working on artifacts. And so in the lab space, it's just adjacent here there's a higher level of filtration, but yeah, nothing that's really super beyond what like a commercial office.
Sure, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So how did this project manage in terms of, let's say, getting done what you wanted to get done and managing the budget?
We couldn't.
I think, I mean, this project has taken quite a bit of time in the sense that every time we exposed something new, we really had to pivot. And so that did have a drastic effect on how we were managing the budget. But right from day one, similar to what Marta was alluding to, is we've had such a strong collaborative team. And even from the very, very beginning, we had a system in place, a strategy to prioritize exactly what was needed and into a must-have and a nice-to-have column. And really that strategy, along with those 6 like core design elements, yes, thank you, and goals for the project really was kind of the way that we decided on how to maintain that budget. Obviously, there are places that we had to kind of shift, remove some scope through a value engineering process to kind of get back a lot of that as well. And as we move into the project 4 section of this, which is all the interior fit out, we're kind of doing the exact same thing. So it's really kind of focusing in on the core strategies, but also maintaining exactly what's needed and wanted from that museum.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd add that I don't think you could do this project without a construction management type of approach. Sure. And that goes down to even the subtrades. So we had subtrades on right from the beginning, or very, very close to the beginning of the project. They were continuously budgeting, continuously evaluating the design. Marta talked about all of the envelope trades that were involved. They were all at the table during design, how to make along on Elistella. That feedback loop was so important on this project. I don't know how you would do this any other way.
For terminology's sake, would you consider this an integrated project delivery project?
Yeah, like I don't know, this, depending on what your definition of,
Like not traditional IPD.
Okay.
no, it wouldn't,
Not IPD, not traditional IPD, but it was probably the most successful case of construction management I've seen, in the sense that everyone contributed from an early stage as opposed to just at like milestone checkpoints. And that was really, really significant, like Regan had said, to kind of keep us on track through this sort of thing.
So what kind of contract did you use to manage this whole thing?
It was a CCDC 5B, so the construction management between client and contractor, and then ours was our typical RAC DOC6 under with bells and insults.
Just a project like this, you know, given the complexity, it's hard to keep everything on track all the time. While still trying to achieve what you want to achieve.
We are very close. After this long and the amount of meetings and conversations and discussions, it was all hands on deck for the last 6 years. Like, it's been nonstop. Like, now that we're transitioning into P4, it's the same thing. And I think that we found our groove and we just kind of all understand each other very, very well, which has helped a lot, because if there was any type of animosity or kind of friction between the groups, this project would have been as successful as it is.
Yeah, cool. Very good. Thanks.
You said P4, assume phase 4?
Sorry.
How many phases are the 4?
Only 4.
There was a 2A and a 2B. So I think we're like 6 phases, and Melanie alluded to that. It really did have to be based on funding, as well as the strategy to keep all the collections in place. So that was phase 1, which was basically relocation of that collections, protecting it, and then constructing around it.
Yeah. Well, hats off to you all for what looks like a great job so far.
yeah.
I can't wait till it opens and I get to tour it as just a tourist.
Well, I mean, with the endowment with the funding from the J.R. Shaw, this is now going to be completely accessible and free to the public, minus in the certain pay locations that Melanie had mentioned about. So we anticipate that this space, and you'll see a lot of those back house spaces become front of house, the great terrace that's going to be now publicly accessible. We imagine this place being more of a community hub than more so an art gallery. We anticipate and hope that people use these spaces for lunch breaks, for small discussions, for anything you could possibly imagine. One of my most fond memories, and Melanie, I think you might have been alluding to this, our very first day of design, we all sat together during COVID, and we said to each other, what is your ideal day, your most perfect day with Glenbow? And we all came to the table with this like perfect day. Right. And a lot of those elements that we still have sketched or written or whatever have come into play into this building. And I think that that is one of the most incredible things that we've done since day one to day. What else to watch?
Yeah, I want to sign to bring that still.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. One more question. Yeah, so this one more like just keep those orienting scholars on like a.
So for the building permit, does it like more like a build a new building, or is more like a typical retrofit? It literally looks like very different log, facade, floor area.
Just don't understand, so is there a difference in the building permit?
Yeah, it's like a new build, or it's like a
Great question.
Yeah.
Again, a very complex process with this project as well, specifically because of all the phasing. And from a mechanical standpoint, it's very difficult for an authority having jurisdiction to predict design elements for certain phases prior to getting the final design. So we had a lot of conversation again with the city of Calgary to really understand the intent of what the projects 2, 3, and 4 would look like in order for them to actually certify and give us a building permit for projects 1. So there was a lot of conversation about the intent of what the mechanical systems more particularly would do for the building, as opposed to what that design was at the moment. So it was a constant negotiation for the entire 6 years with the building permit authority group.
Oh, so it's a pretty lengthy.
Oh yes, the building permits didn't stop.
Oh, so multiple stages.
Oh, I think we had three core building permits. And within those, we probably had 2 within the first, 3 within the second, and probably about 8 revisions to the third. And now with project 4, we're actually gonna have 2, one for the terrace and pavilion and one for all interior construction. But under the interior construction, there's gonna be probably about 4 or 5 building permits underneath that.
Oh, so majority probably still follow the today's code.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, more like towards the new building.
We were held to the building code of when we were designing it. So this one was to the 2019, I believe, Regan, right? Yeah. 2019, not the 2023. And so we were held for that the entire building. They didn't change the requirements on us because that would be almost next to impossible to anticipate those changes. It's such a complex project.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think with that, this is an excellent discussion. I think we're going to all try to stick together in a tour other than traveling in different elevators and whatnot. So I think as more questions come up, I'd like to think we can all ask away. With that, once again, thanks everyone.